I've lived in New Jersey my entire life. And I know lots of interesting people. Artists, musicians, actors, business owners, and politicians. So my goal is to introduce some of the most interesting people who have ties to New Jersey. Either they live here, they work here, they went to school here, whatever tie I can think of. Many of these people are not well known even in New Jersey, but I'm going to change that because I'm Lucille Losapio, and this is Not So Famous in New Jersey. If you're not a musician, you may not have heard of Glenn Alexander, the guitarist, but I guarantee you've heard him play. Not only was he in the band that played at the Conan O'Brien Mark Twain Award Show and toured with Southside Johnny for years, but he's played or recorded with Levon Helms, drummer and vocalist from the band, Darlene Love, Peter Gabriel, La Bamba, the Mahavishnu Project, Bob Dylan, Stuart Copeland, and Elvis Costello. But you'll never hear him talk about it unless you specifically ask him, because he's probably the most humble musician I've ever met, and really a lot of fun. In this two-part interview, because I could not cut it down to 20 minutes, we talk about everything from his career, how he started as a saxophone player, to his love life. And yes, ladies, he is available. I am here today with the storied guitarist, Glenn Alexander. I am just so thrilled to have you here, Glenn.
Well, I'm thrilled to be here, Lucille.
Oh, good. Now, I know you have played with an amazing number of groups, some of them your own, some of them you were a sideman.
Yeah.
What are the advantages of being a sideman as opposed to controlling what your group is performing?
The main thing is you get paid. I don't know what else.
Is that important?
Yes. Like even recently, people will say to me, like offered to play in tribute bands and do all this stuff. And I'm like, no, I am not going to do that. Well, why not? I'm like, I didn't leave Kansas. Everyone I knew, every friend I had, my entire family, and where I grew up, to move here, like I had a plan. I wanted to really write and play my own music. I mean, I wanted to get some experience, so I did start first doing sideman jazz gigs. But then, man, it's a hard road. I had some good success early on with record deals and stuff, but still, to be honest, when Oriah was born, that was when the being a sideman really kicked in. It's like I just said it because why? I needed to make more money.
Well, we were talking about the whole idea when you're doing art to make a living, no matter if you're a painter, a photographer, a musician, a writer, if your goal is to make money, it always corrupts the art.
Yes.
Because you can't be pure if you're doing it like what's going to sell.
Yep. And look, we know, how can I say, I think there are people who set out to do that, and they do that, and they're very successful. But that was never my intention. And I, from my thoughts are, you just do what you do. And if that is something that sells, that, let's say, I don't know, whether it's somebody at a record company, whatever, it seems marketable and they get on board and they sell it, then great. Yeah, for me, just being true to whatever it is that you do instead of chasing that.
Well, I think that's why so many successful artists in all genres quite often come from wealthy families. Because they can afford to not make money.
Yes, I see that with my college students that I teach that, and many of them, yes, they have money. They come from money, so they can go on the road endlessly. They're going like, we're going on tour. You're going on tour, like nobody knows who you are. They don't have to make any money. Frankly, I think in a lot of cases, a lot of money. They have great instruments and everything. Somebody pays, they get in a van or whatever, a couple of vans, and they tour around. I mean, I have students who are just so insanely already connected. It was easier. There's no question. It was easier in the 60s and 70s, Rock and roll was new, and they were searching for talent and looking. And then at some point, it just became really, really hard. And it's like threading a needle, really.
At one point, I was actually trying to get a record deal for Line Drive when they were instrumental.
Yeah.
I don't know if you ever heard of Duke Dubois.
Yes.
Well, I got him on the phone. I said I was with Marnell Management. When we talked, and I sent him tape, and he listened to it. He listened to it while we were on the phone. He passed it on to Dave Grusin.
Wow.
Who really liked it. And then right then they bought another label and they took on all these new artists and they couldn't take anybody else.
Yeah.
It was like that close.
Grusin started that label of GRP.
Yeah.
That was his label. But they probably bought something before that, yeah.
Yeah, this was like later on. It must have been in the late 80s.
Yeah.
The thing is, had been talking to some record labels and a couple of the guys were really helpful. Like, this is what you need to do.
Well, even for me, it's interesting you say that because I had a number of different record deals in the 80s and into the early 90s. It was just easier then. I never got rich, and in fact, it was hard to make a living, but I was touring, doing my own music and recording. I was on different labels. I think the first one was on Chase, and the next couple were on Shawnee, and then I was on Palmetto, and all these, sort of independent labels.
Sure.
But it was great. They would pay for everything. Of
Yeah.
course, that means, which still to this day, they own those records. And a couple of them, they just decided they would not print. A couple of my records that I thought were a couple of my best records, you can't get anywhere. Because then I love that. I went to the record company at one point. I was kind of like, I get it. You're not going to put it out there.
Can I
but
buy it from
Can I
you?
buy it? They wanted $40,000 for the masters. Instrumental music. I'm like, I'll never make that back in my lifetime. But I do think there was a period of time where instrumental music, and we know that because of the smooth jazz thing.
Oh, yeah.
It was huge for probably, it was pretty big for at least 10 years.
Yeah.
And that was maybe the height for me of what I was doing in that music. But then, even in that, I have to share, when my daughter was born, I think I had maybe not too long, I'd gone out on the road, my band was great, and I just was, there was not a lot of money coming in. And it was just like, okay. And the other funny thing is, I thought, I'll take a little break and then I'll come back to this. Well, I had no idea that the business was going to change the way it did. Because I got to tell you, one of my records, was it the first one, my first solo record? It was. It was the first digital, but it came out on vinyl. I don't even know that we had CDs were a common thing yet. They recorded, I'll never forget that. They go, no, we're recording on a VCR. It's 2-track. I was like, what? I never heard of that. And then a few years later, of course, it was everywhere. But as you know, when the record companies and BMI and ASCAP and everybody tried to stop it from happening instead of embrace it. So they just have always been behind the eight ball, which is why for years it didn't pay anything. And now Spotify, get like some stupid...
1/8 of a
Oh,
cent, yeah.
God, it's stupid.
Now, you went from playing jazz rock fusion in the Mahavishnu Orchestra.
I did that. It was actually this thing called the Mahavishnu Project. Now, having said that, we did do some gigs with Jan Hammer, because at that point, Rick Laird was no longer playing at the point at which I started doing that. Because Rick Laird was the photographer for me on my Rainbow's Revenge album. But the record company didn't tell me. They sent me to New York and said, we lined up a photo shoot for your record. I was like, okay, go to this address. I love that. I ring the doorbell, and the door opens, and I'm standing there like, that's the bass player from Mahavishnu. And I was like, am I in the right? Yeah, I've had these moments in my life. That should have been then when I should have just said, okay, I quit. Because he said
He
yes.
has to be a photographer to make a living.
It's exactly right. And because we went to lunch after we did the whole photo session, and he was really great. It was really incredible. And then we went to lunch and talked, and he goes, look, after doing Mahavishnu, those records went gold, playing with everybody, in Europe that was famous in the world and all this stuff. He goes, I moved to New York because that's where it was happening. I needed to be in New York. He goes, the first year I was in New York, I made $18,000 because I was starving to death. No, I'm sorry. Maybe the first year he made like 19 or something. He goes, the second year it went down. I made like 17 or 18. His hobby was photography, and his wife had a corporate job, which is the only way he was surviving. And she got him a gig taking the corporate pictures. He said, I made more money. He said, I made $20,000 in 1 month. And he goes, this was funny. And he was absolutely being honest, and it's true. He goes, I put my bass in the corner, and I have never picked it up since.
Wow.
He quit playing. He never played again.
But you went from the Mahavishnu Project to playing rock and roll with Southside Johnny and the Asbury Jukes. So that's like a pretty big leap.
Yeah.
What kind of mental changes did you have to go through to adjust your playing technique?
Well, so first let me tell you why that happened.
Okay.
And that is because I had signed a management deal with this manager. It was the biggest manager in all of jazz. The stable of artists that he had were insane. It was on the heels of a couple of records I did for Shawnee, and I was just like, this is it. So right away he goes, all right, I'm going to book you for festivals and all these things. But the main thing is we got to get you on a bigger record label, and the music's got to be, more commercial. And he goes, so I want you to start writing songs and you send them to me. So I was writing these songs, I sent them to him, and he, no. This is too jazzy or too complicated, whatever. It's got to be more accessible. Maybe it wasn't that many, but for me, it was probably half a dozen things. He turned them all down. He goes, this is the moment. So we're into this contract only about 6 months. First of all, he hadn't done anything for me. And he goes, all right, so what's going to happen? You're going to come into the office and we're going to write together. And it was just even a moment. I may have even said, okay, and hung up the phone, and then I thought about it. And I called him back. He said, wait a minute, you're the manager. I write and play the music. I just said, no, we're not writing together. I have no interest in that. That's not happening. And we maybe had an exchange, and I just said, no, this shit is never happening. Okay? Forget it. Well, that was the end of that relationship, except he would not release me from that contract. And he came after me. Even the couple of gigs after that, he would show up at the gig and goes, you owe me 20%. I'm your manager and I get 20% or whatever it was. And then at the end of every year, his attorneys would contact me and try to take 20% of whatever my income was when it was tax time. So I quit playing jazz. I couldn't record. And even that's what I mean, even a couple of gigs in New York, I was like, this is crazy. Yeah. So that was what led to, I started thinking, I get so depressed I want to quit. But I started thinking, like, what made me want to play in the first place? And it was the music, which we were talking about earlier. And it was the Allman Brothers. It was Leonard Skinner. I don't know. It was ZZ Top. It was Led Zeppelin. Everything that was on the radio, which is what made me want to play guitar.
How old are you?
Oh, God. I'm old.
Come on, you're probably my age.
I think I'm older. I don't know. Maybe you and I. Well.
What year did you graduate high school?
It's 1975.
Oh, you're a baby. I graduated in 70.
Oh my God. Yeah. Well, so I haven't hit 70. I'm 66. You know. Yeah,
you're
that's it. I know. I think Gary's older than I am too.
You're a whippersnapper. Yeah.
How old are you?
I'm 72.
Oh my God! Wow. I hope I look as good and have it. I feel like at 72, yeah, this is be over for me.
You know, it's so funny. I asked AI, imagine a 72-year-old as Superwoman. And it's like, they have this old woman with these big baggy wrinkles. And I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Is that what AI thinks 72-year-olds look like? Well, not me.
Well, that is true. I think, though, of course, everybody ages differently. And I guess it depends on, like that old saying, damn, if I known I was going to live this long, I would have taken better care of myself.
I know. I keep thinking now, like, I don't have that much longer, so I don't have to worry about too many things.
But you know what? That's why I stopped. I didn't ever took out another term life insurance policy because I go like, I know what's going to happen. I'm going to pay into this for 20 years and I'll live another 10.
Yeah.
So forget it. But so, did that whole thing we were talking about, like I started writing and I just said, I'm not playing jazz. I'm done. I'm done with that world. I did one more record, but it was my acoustic record. It's my daughter's name, Oriah. I did it for Paul Meadow. Anyway, and that was it. I just never looked back. So, yes, I moved towards playing rock and roll, and I started working a lot with, at that time, maybe this is before Mahavishnu Project. I started playing with Mark Pender in his sort of funk band, and I started playing with La Bamba, doing soul and rock music. And I started writing rock and roll, which is everything that I wrote then, which would have been, honestly, 1993 or 94. And, I wrote that, and I made demos of all those songs. Everything that's on this record I have out now with Dave LaRue it's our band LaRue Alexander, LAX. It's all southern rock stuff like High Powers. I wrote all of it then, and in fact we did a tour of Australia playing that music, a combination of that and instrumental things we had a band Stretch in 1996, and I just never looked back from that.
So tell me about Stretch.
When I moved to New Jersey, I only knew one person here, literally one. He was from Kansas, which is why I came here. Bill Elder, a drummer who was a really great drummer, and Bill said, this is where you got to be. And we had played in a really great band in Wichita. So I moved here, and first of all, I was here 3 days, and he left to go on a cruise ship for 6 months. I didn't know a single other person here. But it was before that, when I came to visit, which was probably only a month before that, when I came to visit, because I was here for about 10 days or maybe 2 weeks, he introduced me to this bass player, Dave LaRue. Uh-huh. And that was, Dave and I met, and we played as a trio, and I don't know, we just hit it off. So when I came here, we started playing together, and we all were doing other things, and I got this gig with Chico Hamilton, a great jazz drummer. But I was writing and I wanted to do that. I wanted to do high-end, high-powered fusion music. Yeah. God help me. What was I thinking? And so Dave and I formed that band with Bill Elder, that drummer, and we did a record in 1984. And I don't know, collectively we came up with that name, Stretch, because we were, for us, pushing the boundaries. We were playing shit way over our heads. And, but it turned into this cult following in New Jersey. We had a steady gig at the Court Tavern in New Brunswick.
Oh, really?
Every Wednesday night, that gig went on for years, and it just turned into this amazing cult following, still to this day.
One time, Gary and I went into the city to see you play with Dave LaRue. I don't know whether it was LAX or Stretch or whatever.
But there was nobody there.
No, it was all guys.
Oh, yeah.
All guys.
Yes, yeah.
And it was the only time I've ever been at a venue where there was a line for the men's room and not for the ladies' room. It was like, this is where I gotta go from now on.
That's the ongoing joke about fusion music, you know. I mean, my God, it's like, I do have to say, it started to wear out for me for that reason. Or that was one of the reasons. I just felt like it was always these nerdy guys, all guitar players and bass players and drummers or whatever, analyzing everything you played, and they just wanted to talk music, so it was just like wear you out.
And they're all in the audience.
Oh yeah, they're
with
right.
These faces.
Like as though they're playing
Yeah.
air guitar, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I did that hardcore. That band, we did a whole bunch of dates in 1985, opening for Alan Holdsworth across the United States. And I don't know, again, we never really made any money, but we developed quite a following. But it ended because I think we probably, who knows, we might have kept going, and who knows what would happen. But we weren't making a lot of money, and I think Dave got called to go on the road with Glenn Burtnick because he had landed a couple of really big record deals at the time or something, and he had some success going. And so Dave said, hey, I got to do this, and that was the end, because we had kind of had a pact for probably about 2 or 3 years. We didn't do anything outside of that, you know. And then Bill and I were just, screw you, go F yourself, and it ended. That was the end of it. We did regroup. Maybe a couple of years later, a different drummer, Van Romain, played.
Now, you've been on stage with Alan Toussaint, Elvis Costello, Southside Johnny, Levon Helms, Darlene Love, Jan Hammer, Stuart Copeland, and a lot of others.
Yes.
You remember that, right?
Yes.
So, who do you consider the most amazing artists you've played with, and are any of them real jerks?
Oh gosh, those are good. That's good. I never thought about much of any of that. I don't know. I mean, how can I say? I guess they're all really incredible in their own way. You know what I mean? Like, they all have their own thing. And maybe, how can I say, some of those people are amazing talent and incredible musicians, but maybe not what I would consider like to play for me with someone like Jan Hammer or maybe some of even the lesser known people, because they're such extraordinary musicians. Playing with Levon was deep because you're sort of awestruck a little bit. But I don't think about it too much because you just have to deal.
You have to just do it, yeah.
Yeah, and you can't be thinking about all the stuff they've done or whatever, you know. But
so are any of them real jerks? Now, wait a minute. I think there's one player... He'll remain nameless.
Yeah, there have been some along the way.
Jerk.
And some of those, now I got to be honest, some of those that I listed, I don't know if they are still on my website. Some of them I ended up on recordings with, but I was never in the studio with them at the same time. Yeah. I don't even know. I may have taken Bob Dylan off my website for that reason. Oh. Because I did a whole album. It was called The Gospel Songs of Bob Dylan. Oh. And they did this gets funnier when that shit happens. Apparently, unbeknownst to me, they filmed the sessions while we were recording it because it aired. I've never seen it. Someone not that long ago called me and goes like, dude, I'm watching this documentary. I think you're in this. And I go, and they asked me, did you record this record? And I said, yeah. I think I only did 2 or 3 songs, and Bob Dylan was never in the studio. He's only on one of them, and he wasn't in there when I was in the studio. And so now I got to be honest, that same thing happened because I'm on something with Peter Gabriel and Stuart Copeland. I think there was one session I did do live with Stuart. I got to tell you a funny story though. First or second time that I was working with Levon, first of all, he knows a gazillion songs, and literally 30 minutes before you were going to play, and he would talk about everything he wanted to do. And I have to tell you that I was petrified. Because unlike some other people, I didn't grow up playing a lot of that material, in particular, like band tunes and some of those things might be obscure tunes by the band. But man, he would just talk about, okay, and we're going to do this and things from other albums that I didn't have. I never heard some things. So I was pretty petrified. I would take notes and then I would rely. In that case, there were a couple of bass players who did it a lot. So I was relying on those cats. For me, it was tense. And Elvis Costello was standing right next to me. So we start in, and Levon calls a tune. And he calls the song, and right before it's going, Elvis leans over and he goes, what key is this in? So I go, blah, blah, blah. He goes, what are the chords? I go, it goes C, and then blah, 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 F, and the bridge goes to, And so we start in, so he's playing along, and we get through it, and we go to the second tune. Elvis does the same thing. He leans over, he goes, what key is this in? Blah, blah, blah. What a chord? And we start in. The third tune comes up. First of all, I'm sweating bullets. Yeah. I'm standing next to Elvis Costello. And frankly, on that night, Alan Toussaint was playing piano on that night, too. And Levon calls something, and Elvis leans over to me, and he asked me the same question. I looked him square in the eye. I go like, dude, I don't know any of these songs any better than you do, and you're on your own. Save yourself.
And that is the end of part 1. Stay tuned for part 2, coming soon. Where else can you hear scintillating conversations with interesting people with ties to New Jersey except for here? You can't, and that's why you should subscribe and listen to every episode. I'm Lucille Osapio, and this is Not So Famous in New Jersey.